I'm really pleased to introduce Kate Robinson. Ms. Robinson is an advocate and an individual impacted by FH, and she is going to share her family's journey and her perspective with all of you. Kate, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you to the FH Foundation for inviting me here to share our story. I hope it sheds some light on why these developments and research efforts are so critical to those families living with FH. My husband Dave and I have 3 children. Cameron is 8, Colin is 6, and Molly is 3. And our journey with FH began when our son Cameron was 4 years old, and we noticed some small bumps behind his knees and his elbows. Unfortunately, at the time, we did not understand the crucial significance of these tiny bumps, as we were told it was skin molluscum and just to simply keep an eye on it over time. Over the next few months, those bumps got larger and more pronounced in size, and we eventually took him to a dermatologist to get a second opinion. Unfortunately, the biopsy results were absolutely devastating. We were told that these were cholesterol xanthomas and that Cameron needed to see a cardiologist immediately. To say we were shocked is truly an understatement. We were lost and confused. My husband had high cholesterol ever since he was tested in his early 20s, but no doctor had ever mentioned FH or encouraged us to get our children tested at a young age. We lost almost a year of treating Cameron appropriately because we did not understand the warning signs of this fight that was to come due to those little bumps. We immediately saw a cardiologist at Boston Children's Hospital that specialized in HoFH and HeFH. Finding a specialist was critical to our family. When we first got Cameron tested, his LDL was 897 at the age of 5. At the same time, he had a coronary CT scan done, and he had already had a 90% blockage in his right coronary artery. As you can imagine, this absolutely shattered our world. How could this active little boy who looked so healthy on the outside have such advanced heart disease on the inside? Within a few weeks after that, Cameron had surgery to have a port placed in his chest, and he started apheresis treatments thereafter. He has gone almost every single week since. As of today, he has received 154 treatments at the age of 8. And to think that this number doesn't even include all the routine appointments, such as echocardiograms, EKGs, stress tests, and routine doctor follow-ups. This is a lot for such a young child to process. He was only 5 when he started spending close to 7 hours every single week at the hospital. Although we explained to Cameron that there was no other option, that he had to do this, this was not easy for him to digest. When we started his treatments, we had to engage the behavioral response team at Boston Children's Hospital to meet me at the car before each treatment, because his fear was so paralyzing to him that I physically could not remove him from the car. It was crushing. We also had to engage a child psychologist to do bedside counseling. It was a lot to watch a child to go through. Now, luckily, 3 years later, Cameron has no anxiety surrounding his treatments, and I am constantly in awe at his strength, resilience, and perspective that he has on life. Now, unfortunately, Cameron is not our only child with HoFH. At the time of Cameron's diagnosis, we also got our other 2 children tested. Our son, Colin, who was 3 at the time, had an LDL of 190, and our daughter, Molly, who was 6 months old at the time, had an LDL level of 704. As such, Colin was determined to be HeFH, and Molly was determined to be HoFH. Now, Molly is currently on a combination of rosuvastatin and ezetimibe. However, this only brings her LDL down to 669 as it currently stands. The additional problem for Molly is we are unsure if she will be able to do apheresis as Cameron does, as Molly also has a genetic disorder called microcephaly that has resulted in global developmental delays. Now, on average, it takes Cameron about 6 hours each week right now to receive his treatment. It is unclear at this time if Molly will be able to sit still for that length of time. As such, if medication cannot get Molly's LDL levels under control, then Molly potentially could have to do a liver transplant to save her life. There is an urgent and unmet need to treat these children living with HoFH who are unable to receive apheresis or take certain medications. I want people to know that it is important to diagnose FH, screen the entire family, and treat early to prevent cardiovascular disease in both HeFH and HoFH individuals. Now, my husband Dave was 20 years old when he was started on a statin because his LDL was at a level of 400. Ever since that point, Dave has been on a statin and most recently a PCSK9 inhibitor, which has gotten his LDL levels under control. However, the problem is the damage had already been done. Dave started to experience chest pains 3 years ago. Now, unfortunately, regardless of his history of high cholesterol, our children's diagnosis of HoFH, his cardiologist at the time said it was probably heartburn and prescribed him Prilosec. Now, after experiencing chest pains for over a year with no answers, Dave finally went in for an angiogram, and we are so extremely lucky he did. That morning, they found that he had 2 blocked arteries, one at 80% and one at 85%. He had 2 stents placed that morning. Luckily for us, Dave is now feeling great and his numbers are under control. We are extremely grateful to have an amazing team of doctors and a care management team that truly understands the complexity of living with FH. However, the burden of living with FH, especially for a child, goes well beyond the medical diagnosis. The burden of living with FH for a child spills into everyday life. It determines what sports they can and cannot play. It evokes concern and worry in other parents to have them over for a play date, wondering if they will have a heart attack under their watch. It makes them feel insecure when other kids point out the port in their chest. It makes them miss a day of school every single week to receive their apheresis treatment. It determines where they can live or where they can go to college because they have to live close enough to an apheresis treatment center. FH affects an entire family. It takes time away from your other children. It forces a parent to take time away from work to help their children get their treatment options, or forces a parent to leave their job entirely. Each of these children deserves to live the simplicity of childhood that is such a rite of passage for so many. This disease strips that privilege away from so many children living with FH. And this is why I will continue to use my voice to advocate for awareness, for better treatment options, so that those children can receive those treatments and restore some sense of normalcy to their lives. Listening to these renowned doctors speak about what is on the horizon has brought such hope and promise to those of us living with FH. These efforts provide the strength that we need to fight this fight for our spouses, our children, and the generations to come. Thank you.